Hi, I'm Tom Elmore with Thatchmore Farm. We're a 10-acre family farm in Leicester, North Carolina. And I've been asked to talk with you today about soil blocks and making soil blocks and the soil block seed starting system. We've been certified organic since 1987, and I've been involved with Organic Grower School since the beginning. One of my favorite parts of Organic Grower School is the craft program. So check out the farmer programs part of our website and look up craft and see what you think. So we've been using soil blocks since we started in 1987. It was a system invented by Michael LeBrock, a British engineer, and he came up with this system of frames to produce a soil starting medium. And so there's a whole family of these. This is the smallest. It makes half-inch blocks. It makes 20 at a time. The next size up makes 2-inch blocks, and it makes 4 of them at a time. And then at a more commercial scale, this is the stand-up blocker that makes 20 blocks and moves much more quickly than these 3. This system was invented in Great Britain. It's very popular in Europe, perhaps more so than in the United States. It's used by all scale of growers there, from small landowners to giant farms. There are machines there that will make 10,000 of these an hour compared to our rate of a few hundred per hour. But I think it's particularly well suited to small farms like ours. The soil block approach was popularized probably more by Elliott Coleman in his book, The New Organic Grower, than any other source that I'm aware of. And we've been using it for 30 years with great success. And so I'd like to demonstrate the use of the blockers for you. First, I'll start with the stand-up blocker, and I'll tell you more about the medium that I'm using in a moment. But the stand-up blocker, when I'm using the stand-up blocker, I use a concrete mixing tub, put the ingredients together in the tub, add water, and mix it with a rake. And when it's the right consistency, then we force the blocker down into the soil block medium, and like this. Then, just for neatness, we scrape off the excess on the outside and then put it in a 10-20 nursery tray, and soil blocks happen. So I'll do a couple more of those. So there are 20 of these each time I do it. So this took a minute or so, and we have 60 soil blocks to work with. The smaller blockers, I usually operate at tabletop height. So I'll start with the mini blocker. And so I have the medium in this tub, and it's pretty much the same approach. Scrape off the extra on the side, and I'm using a cafeteria tray in this case. With the mini blockers, you can get a lot of seeds in a small area, so you can comfortably get 200 seeds in a tray this size. And without the holes in the bottom, you can just pour water in and bottom water the seeds as you're getting them started. So that's the mini blocker. Next step up is the 4-hand blocker. And you might notice that it has these cubes inserts in the middle to leave a void where those cubes are located. And so that is what the 4-blocker does. So for years and years, when we were getting started, we did all the soil blocks with this. At the time, the stand-up blocker was over $100, so I stewed about that huge expenditure, but within a few minutes of purchasing it, I knew that that was the right thing to do. So we do tens of thousands of soil blocks a year, and so just that added speed is very helpful. So part of how this family of blockers works is that you can really conserve space. So if you start 200 seeds in the mini blockers in this cafeteria tray, you can watch them very carefully, and as soon as they start to germinate, actually as each one germinates, you can use these custom-made tweezers, and I think I got this idea from Elliot Coleman also. But these are tongue depressors in the middle and plant tags on the outside, and they're just exactly the width of the small blocks. So you can reach in and grab one sprouted seed, and that by some magic just exactly fits in the void left by these cubes in the blocker here. So there are a variety of inserts that you can get for the blockers. These cube holes I find useful for large seeds like peas and beans that need a lot of space. The more typical insert is are these little dimple making devices here, and I haven't tried them, but they now have one that is 3 or 4 times as deep as this for larger seeds to insert them into the soil blocks. And so there's also a blocker that is or looks something like this, but creates a block the size of a 4-inch pot. We have not invested in that blocker yet. I find the versatility of the pot is useful if transplants get a little leggy. When you're potting them up, you can plant them a little deeper in the pot, and that's a little more difficult to do with the 4-inch blocker. So I think the next thing we'll do is talk a little bit about how we sow once we have the soil blocks made. So let me set this out of the way. So this is the tray of blocks that I made with the stand-up blocker. And so our normal procedure is to for each tray that we're going to sow, we have our sowing schedule all set up in terms of trays of 60 plants. And then we'll get a tongue depressor, and with a Sharpie we'll write the date and what the product is, the type of seed on this. And then, so this goes in the tray, and it rides with the tray wherever the tray goes, and then when we transplant it goes into the field. So if we are ever curious about what that plant is, or which variety it is, or when it was sown, we have that information right with the plants. So now I'm going to get out some seeds. So since that said broccoli rabe, we'll get out some broccoli rabe seed. And this is a yogurt lid. The palm of the hand also works pretty well. And then this is a sharpened dowel, and what we do is just moisten it a little to allow it to pick up the seeds. And So the moistness of the tip allows it to pick up an individual seed. We press it into the soil block like so, and just move through the tray until all 60 are sown. So that's when we're doing individual seeds, and I like this method because it gives us a lot of control in terms of making sure the seed is firmly pressed into the medium so it'll pick up the moisture it needs. If we're sowing a brazing mix, which typically we put 4 plants per block, then usually I just pinch the seeds between 2 fingers and try to get 4 seeds in each cell. So I interpret 4 seeds as somewhere between 3 and 6. So that is how we do our brazing mix, and also salad mix is multiple seeds per cell. And Elliot Coleman in New Organic Grower has an in-depth discussion on which types of plants do well in groups in soil blocks, and I'll refer you to that for more detail there. So after we've sown the seeds, this step isn't really necessary with when we use the stick to plant individual seeds, but when we're just dropping seeds into the tray, it turns out a Sharpie exactly matches the indentation made by the blocker, and so we press down on each cell and twist. And so what that does is make sure that the seed has good contact with the soil, so it soaks up the moisture, and the twisting of the Sharpie avoids carrying seeds from one block to the next, and so it stays in the tray where we put it originally. So a couple things to talk about related to this system. One is we don't cover the seed. So we leave it on the surface but in intimate contact with the soil. And so seeds need 3 things to germinate. They need the right temperature, moisture, and access to oxygen. And so by the seed being on the surface, we make sure that there's plenty of oxygen available, and we nearly always meet or exceed the germination percentage on the packet with this system. The one disadvantage of the seeds being on the surface is they're pretty attractive to mice. So after we sow the seeds, we put them in a decommissioned refrigerator with the door shut. That keeps the humidity up, it keeps a constant temperature, and also very importantly, it keeps mice out until they've sprouted. So that requires that we check in the refrigerator every few days to make sure we catch them right after the seed coat has broken, and we get them out in the sun so the plants don't get too leggy. So that is our sowing, and so that's step 1. I'm going to move over here to the some results of the sowing process, and so this is red Russian kale, so similar to broccoli rabe in some ways, but you can see multiple plants in each cell. So this is after about a week from sowing. In another week or 10 days, we're changing varieties, so this is a lettuce, a salad mix. And then this is a larger seeded plant, cucumbers, and so they're all working great in soil blocks. With the larger seeds, I'm sometimes concerned that they may not soak up enough moisture, so we usually pinch the soil over the seed just to make sure that there's moisture approaching the seed from all sides, and they get good contact with moisture. So one of the reasons that I've stuck with soil blocks for so many years is they make great transplants, and with a net bottom tray like this, you can see there aren't a lot of roots running out the bottom of the flat, and so when the root hairs get to the bottom of the soil block, they come in contact with air and they're air pruned, so they don't go any further, and so they just the root mass thickens up within the block. And then when it comes time to transplant, so these are maybe a few days past ideal size for transplanting, but they'll go in the next few days. You can see that there are root hairs poking out on all sides of the soil block. So when we put it in the soil, these within 24 hours or so, these little root hairs are out into the surrounding soil, and the plant has established itself in the field, and it's ready to go. So a lot of times with cell containers, which are probably the most popular system for raising transplants, if the plants get overgrown at all, they pack up against the sides of the cell container, and it's harder to transplant. But with soil blocks, you can easily grab a handful, and they're loosely attached to each other by roots that have grown from one cell to the next. But you can grab a whole handful and transplant them easily into the field without having to wrestle with a container. When they get really root bound, it's often difficult to get the plant out of the container without destroying the plant, and so I think soil blocks are far superior in that regard. So next I'd like to talk about the ingredients that we use to make the soil block mixture. There are a variety of recipes on the web and elsewhere. This one was inspired by Elliot Coleman and his new organic grower, but we've modified it over the years. So we start with a half bale of peat moss, and that's a size that fits in a large wheelbarrow fairly easily. We add about 4 gallons of perlite, so this is the peat moss, there's the example of the perlite. Both of these are available at nursery centers and feed and seed stores for the most part. In terms of adjusting the pH, we use a ground limestone, and we use 1/3 cup of limestone, and then 3 cups of Harmony, which is one brand of baked poultry litter. So it provides the nutrients and micronutrients to get the transplants started. And then the last ingredient here that we've scribbled in but not printed in is 12 gallons of water approximately. So adding the water is, if there's a tricky part, is the tricky part of all this. And so if as you start to make soil blocks, you find that the edges are real crumbly and the blocks are not distinct, it probably needs more water. And so when the moisture content is right, you have nice square edges on the blocks, and so that means that the moisture is sufficient to allow the medium to flow into the blocker easily. And an indication that the mix is too wet is that it flows into the blocker and right back out as you pick it up. So in that case, add a little dry ingredient, and that will adjust the moisture to make it easy to make the blocks and yet avoid the mix falling out of the blocker. So high moisture is important. Peat really resists soaking up water to a point, and then once it starts to get wet, it soaks up a lot of water. So we usually try to mix up our medium several hours before we do the soil blocking to allow it to continue to soak up water, because we don't really want the peat moss to compete with the seeds for moisture. We want the peat moss to be providing moisture to the seed so that it can be well soaked and trigger germination. So those are the ingredients that go into the blocker. That is pretty much how we do soil blocks. I'd just like to hit one more time why we stay with soil blocks as a medium or a method for producing transplants. Probably the first thing is root health. We never have roots circling in the container, and so the root pruning goes on, and so we have healthy transplants that go in the soil, even when they're a little too long in the trays, which we try to avoid, but it seems to be inevitable with the pace of the season around here. The speed of transplanting is great, so we're really happy with that, and our crew likes working with them. They're a very stable item once they get to transplant size, and so they're not falling apart easily. And then also we have some flexibility on depth of transplanting. As a general rule, we try to cover all the little root hairs that are showing on the block. But we don't worry too much about the top of the soil block showing, because there usually aren't root hairs right at the surface. And then that, over time, that dries out and provides a little barrier against fungal diseases right at the soil surface. If you do allow the soil block to show when you transplant, then you probably need to do overhead watering for a few days until the roots get well established. Other folks I've heard recommend completely burying the soil block, so you can use your choice on that. So that's soil blocking at Thatchmore Farm. Sure appreciate your time and attention. Thanks.